Cat Room friends. We're in the middle of Little House in the Big Woods. If you have the book at home, you can follow along. We're on page 96. Did little girls have to be as good as that? Laura asked, and Ma said it was even harder for little girls because they had to behave like little ladies all the time, not only on Sundays. Little girls could never slide downhill like boys. Little girls had to sit in the house and stitch on samplers. Now run along and let Ma put you to bed, said Pa, and he took his fiddle out of his box. Laura and Mary lay in their trundle bed and listened to the Sunday hymns, for even the fiddle must not sing the weekday songs on Sundays. Rock of Ages, cleft for me, Pa sang with the fiddle, and then he sang, Shall I be carried to the skies on flowery beds of ease, while others fought to win the prize and sailed through bloody seas? Laura began to float away on the music, and then she heard a clattering noise, and there was Ma by the stove getting breakfast. It was Monday morning, and Sunday would not come again for a whole week. That morning, when Pa came in to breakfast, he caught Laura and said that he must give her a spanking. First, he explained that today was her birthday, and she would not grow properly till next year unless she had a spanking. And then he spanked so gently and carefully that it did not hurt, and he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He counted one spank for each year. Then Pa gave her a little wooden man that he had whittled out of a stick to be company for Charlotte. Ma gave her 5 little cakes, one for each year that Laura had lived with her Ma and Pa. And Mary gave her a new dress for Charlotte. Mary had made this dress herself when Laura thought she was sewing on a patchwork quilt. And that night, for a special birthday treat, Pa played Pop Goes the Weasel for her. He sat with Laura and Mary close against his knees while he played. Now watch, he said. Watch, and maybe you can see the weasel pop out this time. And then he sang, A penny for a spool of thread, another for a needle. That's the way the money goes. Laura and Mary bent close, watching, for they knew now was the time. Pop, said Pop's finger on the string. Goes the weasel, sang the fiddle plain as plain. But Laura and Mary hadn't seen Pop's finger make the string pop. Oh, please, please do it again, they begged. Pa's blue eyes laughed, and the fiddle went on while he sang. All around the cobbler's bench, the monkey chased the weasel. The preacher kissed the cobbler's wife. Pop goes the weasel. They hadn't seen Pa's finger that time either. He was so quick they could never catch him. So they went laughing to bed and lay listening to Pa and the fiddling, singing, There was an old man, his name was Uncle Ned, and he died long ago. There was no wool on the top of his head in the place where the wool ought to grow. And the next chapter is called Two Bears. Two Bears. Can you see two bears? Two big bears. Then one day, Pa said that spring was coming. In the big woods, the snow was beginning to thaw. Bits of it dropped from the branches of the trees and made little holes in the softening snowbanks below. At noon, all the big icicles along the eaves of the little house quivered and sparkled in the sunshine, and drops of water hung trembling at their tips. Pa said he must go down to trade the furs of the wild animals he had been trapping all winter. So one evening he made a big bundle of them. There were so many furs that when they were packed tightly and tied together, they made a bundle almost as big as Pa. Very early one morning, Pa strapped the bundles of fur on his shoulders and started to walk to town. There were so many furs to carry that he could not take his gun. Now, this story reminds me a lot. I'm having a text-to-text connection. This story reminds me of the ox cart man. Do you remember the ox cart man who took all of his supplies and materials that he had made all year or vegetables that he had grown that season, and he piled them on his ox cart and he took them all to town? Do you remember what he did with them there? Let's see what Pa's going to do with his furs. There were so many furs to carry that he could not take his gun. Ma was worried, but Pa said that by starting before sunup and walking very fast all day, that he could get home before dark. The nearest town was far away. Laura and Mary had never seen a town. They had never been to a store. They had never seen even two houses standing together. But they knew that in a town there were many houses and a store full of candy and calico and other wonderful things. powder and shot and salt and store sugar. They knew that Pa would trade his furs to the storekeeper for beautiful things from town, and all day they were expecting the presents that he would bring. When the sun sank low above the treetops and no more drops fell from the tips of the icicles, they began to watch eagerly for Pa. We'll stop there and we'll read more tomorrow.